Hey, this is Anthony Cesari with Success for Your Songs. One thing that comes up a lot in songwriting is having your lyrics match the mood of your chords effectively. And so that's why in this video I want to talk about the different modes that you can use when you're writing songs. And basically I want to show them to you on a spectrum so that you can understand the brightest modes all the way down to the darker sounding modes so that you'll know which modes to use depending on what your lyrics are talking about. So I think this is a pretty important topic when you're writing songs, because you don't want lyrics that are happy on this, minor key song that just sounds sort of a downer. So I want to be able to have you choose an appropriate mode for your lyrics. So we're going to talk about that here. So this chart here does show you the modes on a spectrum from brightest to darkest, and you'll see that Lydian is really the brightest, and that's because compared to Ionian, it has that raised fourth note. And that's the only mode that has a raised note. The other ones all have these lowered notes, as you see here. Mixolydian just has the lowered seventh, and I should mention that all these lowered and raised notes are all in comparison to the Ionian. That's why the Ionian here says no alterations, because all of these lowered and raised notes here are referring to Ionian. But like I said, Lydian is the only one that actually has a raised note. So that one actually even has a brighter sound than Ionian. The rest of them get darker from there. And I think the best way to compare this is by looking at an example. So we can use a basic example here, which is just a 1-4-5 chord progression, which is super common in songwriting. So I'd like you to use that progression here. And I think it works out well because, as you'll see, as we go from brightest down to darkest, the changes tend to be one chord at a time. So in Lydian, we have this G sharp diminished, a D and an A. The D and A stays the same. As we go to Ionian, that G changes to a G major, and then the D and G stay the same, and then the A goes from A to A minor, and so on. The only one where we have two changes is at the bottom of the chart, where we go from Phrygian to Locrian. We have a D minor to a D diminished, and then an A diminished to an A flat. But having that one change happen from mode to mode will really let you get a feel for how it's becoming slightly darker each time we hear this progression in a different mode. So I am going to play this 1-4-5 progression for you in each of these different modes, and it's going to be this DGA progression. I should also mention too, before I play that you'll notice that the top three modes here are the major modes, and of course those are the brightest ones: Lydian, Ionian, and Mixolydian. And then below that are the minor modes, specifically Dorian, Aeolian, and Phrygian. Locrian really starts in that diminished chord. But you can see these three modes start on that minor chord as the sound gets darker, going down this chart. And I think really this chart will help you out with your song's prosody, how you want your words to tie together with your music, because if you have lyrics that are supposed to be more bright, then you're going to want to use the modes that are on the upper end of the spectrum, the major modes. But as your lyrics or your song ideas get darker and your ideas become darker, you can reflect that in your chord progressions that are on the lower end of this chart. That's why I tend to like to show things on a spectrum like this. I did it in a few of the other lessons as well on different topics, rhymes and things like that. So it helps you tie your lyrical ideas into your music. All right, now let's check out these examples, and I'll try and highlight the changes from progression to progression as we go from mode to mode. So the first one is the brightest, which is the Lydian example, and that has this G sharp diminished chord in the middle. Okay, so next is Ionian, which instead of that G sharp diminished has a G major. Now the Mixolydian has an A minor at the end. The Dorian mode is our first minor mode, so this one starts on a D minor chord instead of a D major. Now the Aeolian has all minor chords. And the Phrygian has a diminished A. And then finally we have the Locrian mode, which, again, this one rarely gets used in songwriting, and here you'll see it's because the root chord is diminished because of the flatted fifth. So a lot of times we don't use diminished chords in songwriting because of the way they sound. So when the root chord is diminished, it can be tough to use, but you can hear how that sounds here. And then, before, when I went through the different modes, the examples, I kind of paused them for a second to just talk about the changes, but I just want to play them back to back now so that you can hear the progression of brightest all the way down to darkest. And again, I'll just try and highlight the changes as they show up, but I just want you to hear from mode to mode what those changes are. So take a listen. All right, so I think that should give you some ideas. Now that we've looked at all the modes, you should have some ideas on how to incorporate these different modes and these different feels in each of the modes into your music and into your lyrics. All right, so I hope that information helps you out. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can do that directly below the video. And also below the video, I have a link for you where you can download our free ebook if you don't yet have it. And it'll show you more techniques for lyric writing and melody writing and things like that that will really help your songwriting out. So click below for more, and I will talk to you in the next one. Thanks. Take care.